guys, because we by experts that we could see it as long as they would be on election day. It's almost as if the GOP voting laws, if the intent of them is to actually suppress the vote, it's almost as if they don't work, right? I'm just saying. I'm just being real. If the intent is voter suppression, then the GOP should stop passing these laws because they obviously don't work, right? They didn't work in 2020, and they're not working now, right? And the Georgia voting law is the most notorious of those laws, right? And there's still record voter turnout. Again, if I was a GOP strategist, and this was my intent, I would stop passing these laws because obviously they don't work, right? But again, that's not the intent. The intent was about integrity, right? And lo and behold, when it comes down to voting day, you still have a record number of people that are turning out to vote. Again, why is that? Because everything the Democrats said was a myth. It was false. They said it was Jim Crow, right? They said that if you're against the Democrats in their federal takeover elections, then you're on the side of Jefferson Davis. You're on the side of the Confederacy, right? The President of the United States said that. But he made that claim with no facts and evidence to back up those claims whatsoever. Again, Democrats, anything that we don't like is racist, right? Regardless of whether or not it's actually racist. It's just anything we don't like is racist, okay? Turns out black people are not too dumb to get IDs, which is an idea that's been perpetuated by...
He's right on this one. There's been too much stuff with putting party over policy. We vote for the Democrats no matter what, even though, history tells us from the past 60 years they haven't done anything that really helps. They were the party of Jim Crow. They were the party of white power back in the day, and they still are, because they just changed the way they say it a little bit. Instead of saying that they are more popular, they say you're too stupid to get an ID, which means you're not as smart as a white person. You're too stupid to plan to vote because of polls, because you're not as smart as a white person. You're too stupid to get into the university, but to lower the standards. Again, always putting white people above black people. That's the thing of the Democrats. So I'm letting him go on some more, so I'm just put him back up here.
The Democrat Party, which in and of itself is racist, right? But the real point that I want to make here, guys, because we now know that black people are indeed smart enough to get IDs, and they will stand in line to vote. They will put in the effort to vote if they want to vote, despite what the Democrats said. The real question I want to pose here, guys, is what are black people actually getting for their vote when they go and vote Democrat?
We can talk about voting all we're there. I wanted to find out, well, what did your vote actually get? You have the House, you have the Senate, you have the White House, and you're still crying about voter suppression. How much more voter suppression?
Because I don't have five.
At what point are you going to move? At what point are you going to move from talking?
So again, this has happened before when Obama was offered. They had the House, they had the Senate, and the House, Senate, and presidency, and they still didn't do anything worthwhile, because the Democrats, in my opinion, they don't want to do anything. They don't want to solve problems. They want people to be dependent. They don't want you to get past the dependent class, because if they do things right, if they raise the standards for everybody, keep the bar at the same level for everybody. To get into the school, you got to do this. To get this job, you have to meet these requirements here. Everybody has to meet the same standards. Over time, people will need less and less of government. And if that happens, Democrats fear they'll lose power. And that's what I think why they won't try to solve problems. They just want to keep perpetuating problems, keep the myths going, keep the stereotypes going. And because of a lot of ignorance, people don't know that that most of their policies, when you look at the outcomes of the policies, it's been detrimental to people they propose to help. The policy, all the welfare programs, a lot of times they hurt more than they help, because they limit you as far as growth and potential. Because if you grow up potential, you lose those benefits, and people are afraid of losing those. So that's what they do. Been doing for years. So we keep voting them, and they keep saying that we're dumber than everybody else. That is a false narrative, and we need to stop pushing that false narrative on us. You know, they do man the streets all the time. They ask people, "Can you get IDs?" And of course, we can get IDs. Of course, we can plan to vote. So it's just a false narrative, and we also don't have in our history taught that a lot of the stuff that we suffered through as black people, and the reason a lot of us a lot of things held us back was started with from the from the era when slaves were freed to the Democrats passing all the red line laws, the Jim Crow laws, and resegregating the federal government and all these restrictions they put on us that held us back after the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment had been passed, which made the level, the playground level, the playground level, and and those that was done by Republicans. And after that, if we just follow the rules, we really need much else because we would have excelled on our own without the hindrances of the Democrats Party. And even now today, they still try to put things in place that hinder you by lowering the standards in your public schools. In Oregon, they took out requirements for people to graduate. So you get a bunch of people who are graduating high school with no skill sets, and they'll be more dependent, and that's what they want, dependent people, and that's not good.
About voting suppression and moving into outcomes, particularly for black people. Okay, every 2 years, every 4 years, we hear vote, 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 vote. But what are you specifically getting for your vote? What are you saying to black people after you say voting? That's fine, I agree with you. No voter suppression, let's end it. But what happens next? What are you specifically doing to help black people?
You know, Rufus,
with
I
that
have to
vote?
tell you,
And don't
I think
hear that
that's a
from
fair question. Well, you hear it definitely on this show.
No, you don't. You never heard on that show, right? You never heard from the mainstream liberal media. You never heard from the Democrat Party, right? They'll tell you, vote, 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 vote. GOP is bad. They're trying to suppress your vote, right? They're trying to keep you from voting because they're racist, even though they have no evidence whatsoever to back up those claims. Zero evidence whatsoever. But they'll never tell you, vote for us because X, Y, and Z outside of, well, the other party is racist, right? So again, when Democrats come out here and talk about voter suppression, right, and how bad it is that GOP is keeping black people from voting because black people are too dumb to get IDs, even though again there's no evidence back on that claim whatsoever, right? We just went over this. Ask yourself, well, what is the point? Because Democrats told us that allegedly black women saved the democracy, right? Black women are responsible for getting the orange man out of office, right? And that the black vote was so crucial for them winning.
And I say every time, every election, they come out and they say the same thing, and they said it for 50 years. After 50 years, they say, have they really made a difference? Why do they keep saying the same problems? Why haven't they solved anything? And you making everything merit-based would solve almost every problem, because if you put merit first, people who are good are going to always go to the top, instead of putting artificial hurdles and telling them false narratives that they're not incapable because they're black. So he states in here that I put a link to his video in here, that we weren't always Democrats, we were Republicans for a long time, because after all, they are the party that freed the slaves, which is kind of backwards when people say that they want to put you in slavery when the Democrats actually was the party of slavery, Jim Crow, KKK, and Woodrow Wilson, who revived the KKK after the Republicans destroyed most of them. And he also wrote books in school to put forth the myth that blacks were inferior simply based on them being black. So that stayed around for a long time. So we got to stop, voting with the feelings and just look at what policies are best. We got Biden. He said when he was running, he said he said about raising costs, raising taxes, ending fossil fuels, which were all bad things, because it's going to make people who are not rich suffer. And if you're not rich, you're suffering. I know I am with $5 a gallon of gas. So you just need to start saying, hey, instead of voting party all the time, look at the policy and say, let's vote for the best policy, no matter what party. If it's good for you, then you vote that way. If it's bad for you, then vote against it. And that's how we need to start thinking, instead of just saying we gotta vote one way or the other based on our skin color, which is dumbassery.
What has Joe Biden and the Democrats done to show appreciation black people for saving democracy. What have they done? A holiday, a Supreme Court justice, that's what they've done, right? They can't even pass police reform, okay? They can't do any of that stuff. Again, ask yourself, not just what the Democrats have or whatever. What have they done for the past 60 years ever since black folks started voting for them in the masses? What have they done? Why are black people still complaining about being systemically oppressed and racism and being behind the 8 ball economically? Why in the world is that still happening if Democrats have done so much for black folks? If Democrats are so good and voting Democrat is so good for black people, why in the world are we still having these conversations? Let me know what you guys think.